All right, Jim. Well, let's get you in a happy mood before we wrap things up. I have here some programs. Let's get to a couple of these. We'll play a little guess the program. How's that sound to you?
All righty. Finish up strong.
All right, well, I'll try. I got a whole lot here. Where do I start? Okay, I'll start with this one. All right, this first program, Jim. The opening bout, Haystack Muldoon versus Larry Simon.
Oh.
Larry Simon of New Jersey. Haystack Muldoon, it just says farmer.
They listed his occupation rather than his hometown.
Jose Romero versus Sonny Fargo.
Oh, okay.
Best 2 out of 3 falls. The Bavarian Boys versus Jerry Graham.
Rudy and Hans?
I do not know for sure. I couldn't tell you.
I think that was their name. Okay, Bavarian Boys versus
Jerry Graham, Dr. Jerry Graham, and Jackie Fargo. Luther Lindsay versus Pat Kelly.
Ooh, that's odd.
2 out of 3 fall tag team match. Hans Schmidt and Red Groupie, or Group, I don't know, Red, sorry to say, versus Tony Marino and Eugene Marin.
Eugenio.
It says Eugene, for the record.
Well, they couldn't spell it right.
2 out of 3 falls, tag team match. Miguel Perez and Ricky Starr versus Pompero Firpo and the Rebel from Alabama. And the main event...
Who was that?
Does not have a picture of that man on here.
I think I should know that, but I don't. And the main event...
The main event to a finish, Argentina Rocca versus Bruno Sammartino.
All righty then. I'm just going to... I'm going to say, is this Madison Square Garden?
It is Madison Square Garden.
Okay, now I'm going to get the year. Because Sonny Fargo is Roughhouse Fargo, as we know, and Jackie being in a tag with Jerry Graham against the Bavarian Boys indicates this is after the Don Fargo years. It's Larry Simon is, of course, a young Professor Boris Malenko. Haystack Muldoon was the alternate to Haystack Calhoun, if you couldn't get him. Pat Kelly of the Kelly Twins that was in the wreck with Adrian Adonis. Luther Lindsay, the great African-American shooter that Stu Hart said was the toughest guy that he ever was in the ring with and died of a heart attack in the ring. Who did Red Group turn into? God damn it. He changed his name and became more known as well. Hans Schmidt, of course, one of the biggest heels of the entire wrestling business during the network days of the early 50s. Miguel Perez and Ricky Starr against Pampero Firpo and the Rebel. And Rocca and Bruno is why, as soon as you got to Miguel Perez and Ricky Starr, I knew it was the Garden. Rocca and Bruno puts it at 1962, because that was a rare babyface match, but they knew they were going to go with Bruno, and they knew that they wanted to, in some way at least, pass the torch. I don't know whether they got Rocca to do a complete full job, but that's got to be fall, winter, 1962.
Monday, Madison Square Garden. Monday, October 24th, 1960.
Oh, what?
This is when Pfeffer got back control of the Garden.
God damn it.
And Bruno was on the outs with Vince Sr.
That's right. That's because that explains the Fargos coming back. Even though Don wasn't available, Pfeffer brought Sonny back. So 1960.
Haystack Muldoon. I have a stack of original unsold Haystack Muldoon 8x10s. I don't know what I'll ever do with them, but I have them.
He had a round kind of, he was bald-headed, right?
Yes.
And had a round kind of head. He didn't have the classic country boy look of Haystacks Calhoun. All right, I was 2 years off. Son of a bitch.
Well, you got the season. At least you got that. The next card here, Jim. This is kind of the same era. Maybe I shouldn't do this one next. Let me move this. All right, I'll go with an easy one. Jose Luis Rivera versus Pete Doherty. Terry Daniels versus Tiger Chung Lee. Brian Blair versus Mr. Fuji. Tony Gurria versus Bulldog Buzz Sawyer. Salvatore Bellomo versus George the Animal Steele. Ivan Putski versus Roddy Piper. And finally, the main event, an 8-man elimination tag team match. The Iron Sheik, Dr. D. David Schultz, Cowboy Bob Orton, to take all the bumps, and Greg the Hammer Valentine versus Sergeant Slaughter, Bob Backlund, Rocky Johnson, and Chief Jay Strongbow.
Holy shit, what a card. That is obviously the WWF, and that is, as far as location, I mean, it's not the Garden, I don't think. I think it would be, I'm not going to say, I'm still keeping my finger on the checker. It would be somewhere like a Philly or a Boston or one of the bigger towns, but not the Garden. And again, it would almost have to be with Buzz Sawyer. He was briefly there. But with Rocky Johnson still there, Chief Jay Strongbow still in the ring, Backlund, it has to be 84 during the initial expansion, right? Because you've got Bellomo is still there, but Piper has come in. 84 at some point, or maybe early 85 at the latest. Help me.
It is the World Wrestling Federation on tour in Providence, Rhode Island at the Providence Civic Center.
Okay.
Tuesday, June 26, 1984.
There you go.
So a few interesting things. Also one of the last Bob Backlund shows.
Yeah, because he was gone pretty soon after that. And Strongbow was retired by the end of the year, right? From in-ring?
That's right. And Buzz Sawyer lasted weeks.
But at the same point, you had a little of the old WWF in Jose Luis Rivera, Pete Doherty, the Duke of Dorchester. And then you had
Putski.
And Gurria and Putski. But then you also had Piper. And you had Blair and, you know, Orton and Schultz and some of the guys that he snagged on the initial expansion. So it was kind of the blending of the old and the new.
All right, Jim, this next program here, which is the first match? Okay, special added attraction, Man versus Bear, Ox Baker versus the Mighty Samson. This match will follow the main event. Program is
that's in case the Bear shits in the ring.
The Great Fuji versus the Magnificent Zulu.
Oh my God. And Fuji was like 5'8" and Zulu was 6'8".
In a tournament match, the Missouri Mauler versus Charlie Cook.
Ooh.
In a tag team match, Lord Jonathan Boyd and Sir Norman Charles versus Angelo and Lanny Poffo. In another tournament match, the Battle of the Mongols, Bolo Mongol versus El Mongol. There will be an intermission, and then a U.S.
Where Ann Gunkel will draw the lucky number.
Very good. A U.S. Heavyweight Championship match. The champion Ray Candy versus Crusher Verdue.
Good Lord.
In a tag team match, Jerry and Luke Graham versus Assassin Number 2 and Carlos Colon.
Jesus.
There will be another intermission. And the main event, Texas Death Match. Ring surrounded with wire cage. Rock Hunter versus Assassin number 1, Tom Renesto. Falls do not count.
Holy moly. Where do we begin? Obviously, Ox Baker and the Bear. It was. I'd never heard of Samson. I've seen Ginger. I've seen Gentleman Ben. Saw a variety of the Bears. Never saw Samson. Okay, Mr. Fuji or the Great Fuji versus Zulu. But was that the real Mr. Fuji? Now that I know where this was.
I'm looking through this for any photos. Here's El Mongo welcomes you to Maria's Mexican restaurant.
That was a big landmark down there. Here's the thing. It's an Ann Gunkel promotion. When the war in Atlanta, when she was running All South Wrestling. And you can tell because like El Mongol in the 60s was one of the biggest names in Atlanta wrestling. And he started as a heel, but then became a babyface and ended up opening a restaurant after he retired and living in Atlanta. And he came back to work for her because he was a fucking name. And you got Jerry and Luke Graham. Luke was from Georgia. But Jerry Graham getting a spot at this period of time, they were, because again, Jerry in the 50s was a huge name in Atlanta. They were doing whatever they could.
Luke Graham had just been unmasked. He had been the mighty Yankee, but Assassin number 2 unmasked him.
There you go. And the Assassins who had gone with Ann Gunkel, number 1 was Tom Renesto. Number 2 was Jody Hamilton, but we didn't know that yet. Tom Renesto had unmasked because he took the job as booker. Rock Hunter was a famous manager of the 70s. Ray Candy was a black baby face that was big in Atlanta at the time. Crusher Verdue was this short, squat, like 5'8", 300-pound fucking guy with this giant chest that actually once sold out Madison Square Garden against Bruno, but that was maybe his crowning achievement. I think I could have sold out Madison Square Garden against Bruno in that run. Boyd and Charles, the Royal Kangaroos. The Missouri Mauler is the brother of Jody Hamilton, Larry Hamilton. Charlie Cook was a guy who I believe had a flirtation, or at least we were told that, with the National Football League, and was another black baby face that worked in the South quite a lot in the 70s. Because of this had to be in the dying days, with Angelo and Lanny on the card as a team. This has got to be late All South. It's got to be 1974, doesn't it? Did she make it to early 75?
She did not make it to 75. This is Tuesday, July 9th, 1974, the Atlanta City Auditorium.
There you go. And with cards like that, a lot of mouths to feed, but I'm not sure how many people would have paid to see half these fucking matches.
Hey, a few quick notes from the program here. Here's a note from Ann Gunkel. Matt Chat by promoter Ann Gunkel. Sorry I haven't written anything in a long time, but I've been very busy going around the country looking for and booking some of the nation's top wrestlers to appear here in the near future. Last week, here at the auditorium, and this is about the unmasking that I mentioned, also, I'm really impressed by the sensational young Carlos Colon. He wasn't young by that point. He'd already been wrestling for 15 years probably, right?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Well, he's in his mid-30s. He was young back then.
He might just be a surprise entry into the Georgia Heavyweight Championship battle, but we will wait and see as there are many more matches and lots of good wrestlers to eliminate. And then also in here, the announcer Ed Caprell, timekeeper Tom Renesto Jr., publicity Charlie Smith.
Good old Charlie Smith.
All-Star Championship Wrestling on TV for July and August. It has the TV schedule, but with an asterisk. Possibility of Braves game, extra innings, run over. Some things never changed. Studio Wrestling, Channel 17, 1018 West Peachtree Street, admission free. Get free tickets from Ed Caprell at ringside, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. every Saturday. Watch on TV. Tune in, Channel 17, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. every Saturday night. And they taped it. Was it right before or right after the Georgia Championship Wrestling crew taped their show?
Yes, one or the other, either before or after. They use the same ring. And the one company's guys would have to come in, do their show, and then leave, and the other company's guys come in, do their show, and leave.